1. All right, let's dive a little deeper into this 1976 Chevrolet Corvette, shall we? This iconic American sports car has been turning heads for decades, and it's easy to see why. The 76 model year marked the end of an era for the C3 generation, which began back in 1968. It was a time of change for the Corvette, with new safety regulations and emission standards shaking things up. But despite the challenges, the 76 Corvette still managed to pack a punch. The standard engine was a 350 cubic inch V8, which churned out a respectable 180 horsepower. But this particular car has been treated to a new 350 GP engine, which is a serious upgrade. With that kind of power under the hood, you can expect some thrilling acceleration and a top speed that'll make your heart race. Now, let's talk about the transmission. The seller mentions that it's an automatic, which might not be everyone's cup of tea. Some purists prefer a manual gearbox for that extra level of control and engagement. But hey, there's something to be said for the convenience of an automatic, especially in a classic car like this. And with a rebuilt transmission that's only got 1,000 miles on it, you can rest assured that it's ready to handle all that extra power. Moving on to the exterior, it's hard not to fall in love with that classic Corvette styling. The long swooping hood, the flared fenders, and the distinctive curved rear window. It's a design that stood the test of time. And with fresh paint in a vibrant shade of red, this car is sure to turn heads wherever it goes. The seller also mentions new tires, which is always a plus. You don't want to be rolling on old, worn-out rubber, especially in a high-performance machine like this. Inside, the seller has already done some work to make this Corvette feel like new again. The seats and carpeting have been replaced, which is a big deal in a car of this age. After all, there's nothing worse than sliding into a seat that's torn, stained, or just plain worn out. The seller also mentions that they've got new door panels and hardware ready to go, but they haven't been installed yet. That gives you the opportunity to put your own personal touch on the interior and really make it your own. Of course, no car is perfect, especially one that's been around for over 4 decades. The seller admits that the interior still needs some work, and that's something to keep in mind if you're considering taking on this project. But if you're handy with tools and you've got a vision for what you want this Corvette to be, then this could be an incredible opportunity. At the end of the day, this 1976 Chevrolet Corvette is a classic American sports car with a ton of potential. With a new engine, a rebuilt transmission, fresh paint, and a host of other upgrades, it's got all the makings of a serious head-turner. And at just $10,000, it's a bargain compared to some other classic cars on the market. So if you're ready to take on a project and make this Corvette your own, then don't hesitate. Reach out to the seller, schedule a time to check it out in person, and get ready to fall in love with an American icon. Who knows? This could be the start of a beautiful friendship between you and your new four-wheeled companion. 2. We've got a real blast from the past to check out. A 1973 Chevrolet Vega that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This little blue beauty can be yours for just $5,900, and let me tell you, it's got some serious potential. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. The Vega? Isn't that the car that's famous for its quirky reputation and tendency to rust? Well, yes, it's true that the Vega had some issues back in the day, but this particular car seems to have stood the test of time. And it's got some pretty cool features that make it worth a closer look. First off, let's talk about that engine. Under the hood, you'll find a 4-cylinder power plant that's been upgraded with a Holley 4-barrel carburetor. That means this little Vega should have some extra pep in its step compared to the stock version. And with only 73,000 miles on the odometer, it's still got plenty of life left in it. But the real star of the show here is the transmission. This Vega is rocking a 4-speed manual gearbox with a Hurst Variget shifter. For those of you who aren't familiar, the Variget was a special shifter designed specifically for the Vega that allowed for smoother, more precise shifts. It's a pretty rare find these days, and it's sure to make this car a blast to drive. Out back, you'll find a positive-traction rear end, which means this Vega should have plenty of grip when you need it. That's a big plus if you plan on doing any spirited driving or hitting the autocross course. Now let's talk about the condition. The seller describes it as good, but as with any classic car, that can mean different things to different people. From the photos, it looks like the paint is in decent shape, with a nice, glossy finish. The interior appears to be in good condition too, with no obvious rips or tears in the seats or carpet. Of course, with any car this old, There are bound to be a few imperfections. The seller doesn't mention anything specific, but it's always a good idea to give it a thorough once-over in person before making a decision. Check for any signs of rust, especially in the typical problem areas like the fenders and rocker panels. Make sure all the electrical components are working properly and that the engine runs smoothly. Overall, though, this 1973 Chevrolet Vega GT seems like a pretty solid find for the price. With its upgraded engine, rare variant shifter, and positraction rear end, it's got all the makings of a fun little driver's car. And with its clean title and relatively low mileage, it could be a great addition to any classic car collection. So, if you're in the market for a quirky, cool little piece of American automotive history, this Vega might just be the ticket. As always, do your due diligence and check it out in person before making any decisions. But if everything checks out, you could be the proud new owner of a seriously unique ride. 3. We've got a real treat for you. A 1961 Chevrolet Corvair Monza that's looking for a new home. This classic coupe is up for grabs on Craigslist for just $3,500, and let me tell you, it's got some serious potential. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Corvair, it was a pretty revolutionary car when it first hit the scene back in 1960. It was the first American car to feature a rear-mounted, air-cooled engine, which gave it some unique handling characteristics. The Monza was the sportier version of the Corvair, with bucket seats, a more powerful engine, and a few other upgrades. This particular Monza is a 900 series, which means it's got the larger 6-cylinder engine. The seller mentions that the engine turns over but isn't currently running, so it'll need some work to get it back on the road. But hey, that's part of the fun of owning a classic car, right? One of the big selling points of this Corvair is its condition. The seller describes it as a nice, solid car with very little body rust. That's a big deal for a car that's over 60 years old. The only area of concern they mention is the battery box, which is a common problem area for Corvairs. But overall, it sounds like this car has been well preserved over the years. Inside, the seller says the interior is complete, which is another big plus. Too often, classic cars like this have missing or damaged interior components that can be a real pain to track down. With a complete interior, you've got a great starting point for any restoration or customization work you might want to do. Speaking of customization, this Corvair has already had a bit of work done in that department. The seller mentions that it's got a custom paint job, though they don't specify exactly what color it is. From the photos, it looks like a nice, glossy finish that really makes the car stand out. Now, there are a couple of potential downsides to keep in mind with this car. First off, the seller mentions that it's being sold with a New Hampshire bill of sale, which suggests that it might not have a proper title. That's not necessarily a deal breaker, but it's something to be aware of if you're considering making an offer. The other thing to keep in mind is the odometer reading. The seller says it shows just 35,000 miles, which is pretty low for a car this age. But without any documentation to back that up, it's hard to say for sure whether that's accurate. It's possible that the odometer is rolled over or that it was replaced at some point in the car's history. Overall, though, this 1961 Chevrolet Corvair Monza 900 seems like a pretty solid find for the price. With its unique rear engine layout, sporty Monza trim, and relatively good condition, it's got a lot of potential for the right buyer. Whether you're looking for a fun weekend cruiser or a full-on restoration project, this Corvair could be a great starting point. As always, be sure to do your due diligence before making any decisions. Give the car a thorough once-over in person, and don't be afraid to ask the seller for more information or documentation if you need it. But if everything checks out, you could be the proud new owner of a seriously cool piece of American automotive history. A 4. We're taking a closer look at a 1963 Rambler Classic 770 that's up for grabs on Craigslist for just $3,500. This two-door coupe is a real blast from the past, and it's got some serious potential for the right buyer. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This Rambler has seen better days. The seller describes its condition as fair, and there's definitely some rust to contend with. But hey, that's part of the charm of owning a classic car, right? It's not supposed to be perfect, it's supposed to have character. Under the hood, you'll find a 1966 Rambler V8 engine that's been swapped in by a previous owner. It's a 290 cubic inch motor with a 2-barrel carburetor, and it's paired with a Borg Warner M35 3-speed automatic transmission. The seller says the engine runs and drives well, but it does have a few quirks. There's a bit of smoke on startup, a rear main seal leak, and a lifter that's slow to pump up at times. But once it's warmed up, it quiets down and runs pretty smoothly. The rear axle is open and seems to have a 3.31 ratio, which should make for some pretty peppy acceleration. And the dual exhaust with glass packs probably sounds pretty sweet too. The seller says there are no issues with the rear axle or transmission, which is a big plus. Inside, the Rambler is showing its age a bit. The speedometer works, but the other gauges are kaput. The headlamps, turn signals, brake lights, and horn all work though, so you're not completely in the dark. And the vacuum wipers are functional, although there's only one blade and arm attached at the moment. Hey, at least you'll have a clear view out of one side of the windshield, right? The heater works, and the core doesn't leak, which is a nice bonus. And the brakes are said to be in good shape too. The car sits on newer tires that are only about 6 months old, so you shouldn't have to worry about replacing those anytime soon. Now let's talk about that rust. The seller is upfront about it, and there are a few areas of concern. The trunk floor is said to be very good, and the underside is solid. But the front floor pans in the feet area are rusted, and a previous owner tacked in some floor tubs to patch things up. There's also a rust hole on the firewall above the blower motor case and some rust on the upper fender mounting area. But the rest of the floor, including under the seats and in the rear, is said to be in very good shape. The body has some rust too, which is shown in the photos, but the car has been repainted at some point, so it's not too shabby looking overall. And hey, a little patina never hurt anyone, right? The seller has owned the car for 2 years, and before that, it sat for about 6 years. But they do drive it a couple of times a week, including the occasional 25-mile commute to work. So it's not just a garage queen, it's a car that's meant to be driven and enjoyed. Overall, this 1963 Rambler Classic 770 is a solid project car for someone who's not afraid to get their hands dirty. It's got some issues, sure, but it's also got a lot of potential. And at just $3,500 or a reasonable offer, it's a pretty affordable way to get into the classic car hobby. As always, be sure to give the car a thorough once-over before making any decisions. And don't be afraid to ask the seller for more info or clarification on anything that's not clear. But if you're looking for a fun, quirky classic that's sure to turn heads wherever you go, this Rambler might just be the ticket. 5. All right, classic car enthusiasts, buckle up because we've got a real gem to talk about today. Feast your eyes on this gorgeous 1966 Plymouth Fury 3 that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist. With an asking price of $12,200, this beauty is sure to turn heads and make you the talk of any cruise night or car show. First things first, let's talk about the history of this Fury. According to the seller, it's a Southern car, which is a huge plus in the classic car world. Southern cars tend to have less rust and wear due to the milder climate, and this one even comes with documentation to prove its Southern roots. That's a big deal when you're talking about a car that's over 50 years old. Now, let's get to the good stuff, the specs. Under the hood, you'll find a 318 poly engine, which is a great choice for a car like this. It's got plenty of power to get you down the road, but it's not so big that it'll be a gas guzzler. The engine is paired with a 727 automatic transmission, which is a reliable and smooth shifting unit that'll make cruising a breeze. One of the coolest things about this Fury is the recent upgrades it's received. The seller mentions a front disc brake conversion, which is a fantastic upgrade over the original drum brakes. Disc brakes provide better stopping power and are less prone to fade under heavy use. The car also has a dual master cylinder and vacuum assist, which means you'll have plenty of braking power when you need it. The fuel tank has also been gone through, which is important for any classic car. Old fuel tanks can rust and corrode over time, leading to leaks and other problems. It's great to know that this Fury has a tank that's been inspected and serviced. Inside, you'll find some modern conveniences like a satellite radio and CD player. While some purists might scoff at the idea of modern electronics in a classic car, I think it's a great addition. It means you can enjoy your favorite tunes while you're cruising down the road in style. Now let's talk about the exterior. The seller mentions that the car has an older repaint with some touch-ups. They describe it as a 5-footer, which means it looks great from a distance, but might have some imperfections up close. That's pretty common for a car of this age, and honestly, I think it adds to the charm. This Fury isn't a trailer queen or a show car. It's meant to be driven and enjoyed. The seller also mentions that the car is a second-year model for the 4-door hardtop style, which means it doesn't have a pillar between the front and rear doors. That's a really cool and unique feature that you don't see very often anymore. One thing to note is that the car was originally equipped with air conditioning, but the system has been removed. The seller does have the original compressor and other parts though, so it could potentially be reinstalled if you're handy with a wrench. The seller also mentions that the car comes with a choice of tires and wheels, which is a nice touch. It means you can customize the look of the car to your liking and make it truly your own. Overall, this 1966 Plymouth Fury 3 seems like a fantastic classic car for someone who wants a reliable and stylish cruiser. It's got a great history, some nice upgrades, and a ton of vintage charm. The fact that it's a Southern car with documentation is just icing on the cake. Of course, as with any classic car purchase, it's important to do your due diligence. Give the car a thorough inspection in person, and don't be afraid to ask the seller for more information or clarification on anything that's not clear. But if everything checks out, you could be the proud new owner of a seriously cool piece of American automotive history. And with summer just around the corner, what better time to hit the road in a classic convertible like this? 6. All right, let's dive a little deeper into this 1977 Pontiac Grand Prix SJ, shall we? First off, can we talk about those lines? The Grand Prix has always been a looker, and this 77 model is no exception. Sure, the repaint might not be up to Concours standards, but with a little work, this car could be turning heads at every stoplight. Now, about that engine knock. It's not ideal, but it's not the end of the world either. These 400 CUI engines are known for their durability, so with a little diagnostic work and some elbow grease, you could have this baby purring like a kitten in no time. And if worst comes to worst, the seller is offering up a rebuilt 400 with low miles as a potential replacement. That's like getting a bonus prize in your cereal box. Moving on to the interior, it's no secret that it needs some work. The seller mentions that the bucket seats need recovering and the dash is shot. But hey, that's just an opportunity to put your own personal touch on this classic. Imagine sliding into those freshly reupholstered seats, gripping that new steering wheel, and cruising down the highway like a boss. But perhaps the most impressive thing about this Grand Prix is the sheer amount of extras that come with it. A spare hood and trunk lid, NOS quarter skins that cost $1,800? That's like getting a buy one get one free deal on classic car parts. And with a clean title and only 63,000 miles on the odometer, this car has plenty of life left in it. Now, I know some of you might be hesitant to take on a project car like this, but let me tell you, there's nothing quite like the satisfaction of bringing a classic back to life. And with a price tag of just $4,500, this Grand Prix is practically begging for a new owner who will give it the love and attention it deserves. So what are you waiting for? If you've got the skills, the tools, and the passion for classic cars, this 1977 Pontiac Grand Prix SJ could be the project of your dreams. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Give the seller a call and make an offer before someone else snatches it up. 7. Feast your eyes on this stunning 1950 Ford Custom two-door, currently up for grabs on Craigslist for a cool $12,500. This beauty is the real deal, and I'm here to give you the lowdown on why it's worth every penny. First things first, let's talk about the condition of this classic. The seller describes it as excellent, and from the photos I can tell you that's no exaggeration. The paint job is a gorgeous blue that looks like it was just rolled out of the showroom. The chrome is shining bright, and the body lines are as straight as an arrow. It's clear that this Ford has been loved and cared for over the years. Under the hood, you'll find a flathead V8 engine that's been converted to a more reliable 12-volt system. Plus, it's got electronic ignition, so you won't have to worry about fiddling with points and condensers. This baby is ready to hit the road and turn some heads. But the real showstopper is the interior. The upholstery has been professionally redone, and it shows. The seats look plush and inviting, and the door panels are crisp and clean. You'll feel like a king behind the wheel of this classic. Now, I know some of you might be hesitant about the manual transmission, but let me tell you, there's nothing quite like the feeling of shifting gears in a classic car. And with the 3-on-the-tree setup, you'll feel like you're driving a piece of history. Trust me, it's worth learning if you don't already know how. The odometer shows only 9,000 miles, which is mind-boggling for a car that's over 70 years old. But the seller doesn't mention whether that's the original mileage or if the odometer has rolled over. Either way, This Ford is a time capsule that's just waiting for a new owner to appreciate it. Now, I know $12,500 might seem like a lot of money for an old car, but hear me out. This isn't just any old car. It's a piece of American history, a testament to the craftsmanship and style of a bygone era. And with the excellent condition it's in, you're not just buying a car, you're investing in a work of art. The seller is firm on the price, and I can see why. They know what they've got, and they're not willing to let it go for a song. And honestly, I don't blame them. If I had the cash, I'd be tempted to snap this beauty up myself. So if you're a serious buyer with a love for classic American iron, don't let this opportunity pass you by. The seller is only entertaining serious inquiries, so make sure you've got your ducks in a row before you reach out. And if you do end up taking this beauty home, be sure to give us a shout and let us know how it rides. 8. Get ready to feast your eyes on this 1969 Ford Thunderbird, currently up for grabs on Craigslist for just $4,500. This baby is loaded with options and even has an ultra-rare sunroof that'll make you the envy of every classic car lover in town. Now, I know what you're thinking. A car this old must be a rust bucket, right? Well, think again. The seller has provided plenty of pics, and while there is some rust visible, the body is straight as an arrow and all the panels open and close like a dream. The frame and floors are in excellent shape too, thanks to a generous coating of old undercoat. But the real star of the show is what's under the hood. This T-Bird is packing a numbers-matching 429 engine, paired with a C6 Autotrans and a beefy 9-inch rear end. And get this, the seller has dropped close to $5,000 on new parts, including a complete brake system, gas tank, lines, fuel pump, rebuilt carb, and much more. This bird has been thoroughly gone through and is ready to hit the road. The interior is a real time capsule too. The original black upholstery is in great shape, and the car is loaded with power seats, AC with climate control, a tilt wheel, and an AM/FM radio. The only thing not working is the power windows, but hey, that's an easy fix. Now, I know some of you might be hesitant about the missing title, but fear not. The seller has a stack of paperwork, including the original dealer invoice and service records. They'll provide a bill of sale, and apparently, Connecticut doesn't issue titles for cars this old anyway. So as long as you're not planning on flipping it right away, it shouldn't be a problem. The seller is firm on the price at $4,500, and honestly, I think that's a steal for a car with this much history and potential. They may consider trade, so if you've got something cool to offer up, it's worth a shot. But the best part? The trunk is full of extra parts, so you'll have plenty to tinker with and make this bird truly your own. And with a little elbow grease and some TLC, this T-Bird could be the crown jewel of any classic car collection. So if you're ready to take on a project with tons of potential, don't let this one fly away. Give the seller a shout and see if you can make a deal. And if you do end up bringing this beauty home, be sure to give us a holler and let us know how it goes. 9. Check out this 1967 Dodge Coronet Deluxe, currently listed on Craigslist for just $7,500. This 4-door beauty is a real head-turner, and it's got plenty of goodies under the hood to back up those classic good looks. First off, let's talk about that engine. This Coronet is rocking the legendary Slant 6, a power plant known for its durability and efficiency. And the seller has gone the extra mile to make sure it looks as good as it runs, with a detailed and painted engine bay that'll make you proud to pop the hood at any car show. But that's not all. This Coronet has been treated to a host of new parts, including front and rear brakes, wheel cylinders, hoses, a spring kit, an idler arm, and a trans mount. The seller has even thrown in a new battery, voltage regulator, and alternator, so you can be sure this baby is ready to hit the road. And when you do, you'll be riding in style with the original paint color and a fully redone interior. The AM/FM/CD player is a nice modern touch, but the real star of the show is the talking alarm, because who doesn't want their classic car to greet them every time they get behind the wheel? Now, I know some of you might be wondering about the overall condition of this Coronet. The seller doesn't mention any major issues, and the odometer shows just 69,000 miles. Pretty low for a car that's over 50 years old. The clean title is a nice bonus too, so you can be sure you're getting a legitimate ride. Of course, no classic car is perfect, and this Coronet is no exception. The seller does mention that it has power steering and regular brakes, so if you're looking for a fully modernized ride, this might not be the one for you. But if you appreciate the charm and character of a classic Mopar, this Coronet is definitely worth a closer look. And at just $7,500, it's a bargain compared to some of the other classic cars out there. Sure, it might need a little TLC here and there, but that's half the fun of owning a vintage ride. Plus, with those flamethrowers, whatever those are, you're sure to be the talk of the town wherever you go. So if you're ready to experience the thrill of driving a piece of American automotive history, don't let this 1967 Dodge Coronet Deluxe pass you by. Give the seller a shout and see if you can make a deal. 10. Get ready to feast your eyes on this gorgeous 1968 Oldsmobile Delmont 88, currently up for grabs on Craigslist for just $9,500. This beauty has been mostly refurbished and is just waiting for the right owner to give it the final touches it deserves. First off, can we talk about that paint job? The seller has given this Delmont a fresh coat of blue that's sure to turn heads wherever you go. It's the kind of color that just screams classic American muscle, and it looks absolutely stunning on this car's sleek lines. But the real kicker is the interior. The seller has already done most of the heavy lifting here, giving the Delmont a brand new interior that's just begging for someone to finish it off. Imagine sliding into those plush seats, surrounded by the smell of fresh upholstery and the gleam of new chrome. It's enough to make any classic car lover weak in the knees. Under the hood, this Delmont is packing a powerful 8-cylinder engine that's ready to rumble. The seller says it runs and drives great, so you won't have to worry about any pesky mechanical issues holding you back from hitting the open road. And with just a bit over 45,000 original miles on the odometer, this car has plenty of life left in it. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, but wait, the interior isn't finished? That sounds like a lot of work. And sure, it might take a little elbow grease to get everything just right, but think of it this way. You've got the chance to put your own personal stamp on this classic ride. Whether you want to keep it period correct or add some modern touches, the possibilities are endless. Plus, at just $9,500, this Delmont is a steal compared to some of the other classic cars out there. You're getting a mostly refurbished ride with a clean title and low mileage, all for a price that won't break the bank. It's the kind of deal that doesn't come along every day. So if you're ready to take on a project that's almost finished, and you've got a soft spot for classic American muscle, this 1968 Oldsmobile Delmont 88 might just be the car of your dreams. The seller says it needs a good home, and I can't think of a better place for it than in the hands of someone who will appreciate it for the piece of automotive history it is. 11. We've got a real treat for you, a 1976 Cadillac Eldorado convertible that's just begging for a new lease on life. This classic beauty is up for grabs on Craigslist for $8,000, and while it might need some TLC, it's got plenty of potential for the right owner. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, this Eldorado has seen some better days. The seller admits that it needs some interior work and a serious detailing, and the back windows aren't working at the moment. But hey, that's all part of the charm of owning a classic car, right? The good news is, this caddy runs and shifts like a dream. Under the hood, you've got a powerful 8-cylinder engine that's ready to rumble, and the automatic transmission is smooth as butter. So even if the cosmetics need some work, you can rest assured that the mechanicals are solid. And let's talk about those cosmetics for a second. The brown paint job might not be everyone's cup of tea, but there's no denying the classic lines of this Eldorado. With a little elbow grease and some polish, this baby could be turning heads at every stoplight. Plus, it's a convertible. Imagine cruising down the highway with the wind in your hair and the sun on your face. It doesn't get much better than that. Now, I know $8,000 might seem like a lot of money for a car that needs work, but hear me out. This is a piece of American automotive history. The Eldorado was the epitome of luxury back in the day, and owning one is like owning a piece of that legacy. Plus, with a little investment and some DIY spirit, you could have a real showstopper on your hands. The seller has provided some pictures of the car from when they first bought it, and while it might not look exactly the same today, it gives you a good idea of what you're working with. And honestly, a little patina never hurt anyone. It just adds to the character of the car. So, if you're ready to take on a project and give this Eldorado the love it deserves, don't hesitate to give the seller a call. They've provided their phone number right there in the ad so you can get in touch and start negotiating. And who knows, maybe you'll be the one to bring this classic caddy back to its former glory. 12. Get ready to feast your eyes on this gorgeous 1966 Chevrolet Impala, currently up for grabs on Craigslist for just $14,000. This baby is a real head-turner, and it's got the paperwork to back it up. First off, let's talk about that engine. Under the hood, you'll find an original 283 cubic inch V8 paired with a TH350 transmission. But here's the kicker. The seller is including the original 2-speed Powerglide transmission with the sale. That's right, you're getting a piece of Chevy history with this car and the documentation to prove it. The seller has a certified number matching certificate from the North Carolina Department of Theft, so you can be sure that this Impala is the real deal. And with just 43,000 miles on the odometer, it's clear that this car has been well cared for over the years. Now, I know some of you might be wondering about the overall condition of this Impala. The seller admits that the trunk pan is rusted and needs a fuel tank strap, but they've been driving it around town every week with no issues. The speedometer is currently disconnected, but there's a GPS speedometer installed to keep you on the right side of the law. But let's be real. The real reason you want this car is for the cool factor. The black paint job is sleek and sexy, and the classic lines of the Impala are sure to turn heads wherever you go. Whether you're cruising down the highway or rolling up to a car show, this baby is guaranteed to make a statement. And the best part? The seller is open to trade-ins as long as they pass the common sense test. So if you've got a ride that you're looking to upgrade, this might be your chance to make a deal. Of course, no classic car is perfect, and this Impala is no exception. The seller mentions that it runs and sounds good, but there's always room for improvement. Whether you want to keep it original or add some modern upgrades, the possibilities are endless with this car. So if you're ready to experience the thrill of driving a piece of American automotive history, don't let this 1966 Chevrolet Impala pass you by. Give the seller a shout and see if you can make a deal. 13. We've got a real treat for you. A 1984 Chevrolet Corvette that's just begging for a new owner. This beauty is currently up for grabs on Craigslist for just $4,500. And while it might need a little TLC, it's got plenty of potential for the right buyer. Now I know what you're thinking. A Corvette for under $5,000? There must be a catch, and you're right, there is. The seller admits that the digital gauge needs to be repaired or replaced, and the radiator fan recently stopped working. But don't let that scare you off. These are relatively minor issues that can be fixed with a little elbow grease and some spare cash. The good news is, this Vet has been well maintained over the years. The seller has spent a pretty penny on repairs and upgrades, including a new braking system, radiator, fuel pump, and even all new weather stripping. And with just 63,700 miles on the odometer, this car has plenty of life left in it. Under the hood, you'll find a small block 350 cubic inch 5.7-liter V8 engine, paired with an automatic 4-speed transmission. The seller says it's not the fastest Corvette out there, but it still gets up and goes when you put your foot down. And with a modified exhaust, it sounds absolutely killer. Now, I know some of you might be hesitant about the lien on the title, but the seller is willing to meet at their credit union to complete the transaction and have the lien removed immediately upon payment. That shows they're serious about making a deal and want to make sure everything is on the up and up. The only real downside here is that the seller isn't handy enough to do the little repairs themselves. But honestly, that's not a bad thing. It means you've got the opportunity to make this Vet your own and really dive into the world of classic car ownership. And let's talk about the aesthetics for a second. The gray paint job is classic and understated, and the lines of the C4 Corvette are just as sexy today as they were back in 1984. This car is sure to turn heads wherever you go, whether you're cruising down the highway or rolling up to a car show. So, if you're ready to take on a project car with tons of potential, don't let this 1984 Chevrolet Corvette pass you by. The seller is asking $4,500 firm, and while that might seem like a lot for a car that needs some work, it's actually a pretty fair price for a classic Vet in this condition. Give the seller a shout and see if you can make a deal. And if you do end up bringing this beauty home, be sure to give us a holler and let us know how it goes. We'd love to feature it on the channel and see how you've made it your own. 14. Get ready to feast your eyes on this gorgeous 1979 Lincoln Town Car, currently up for grabs on Craigslist for just $12,500. This beauty is the epitome of classic American luxury, and it's got the features and condition to back it up. First off, can we talk about that black-on-black color scheme? The sleek black exterior is complemented perfectly by the plush black velour seats inside, creating an atmosphere of pure sophistication. And with just 98,000 miles on the odometer, this town car has plenty of life left in it. But the real kicker? The sunroof. Imagine cruising down the highway with the wind in your hair and the sun on your face, all while surrounded by the opulence of a classic Lincoln. It doesn't get much better than that. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, but wait, it's a 1979. It must be falling apart by now. But fear not, my friends. The seller has made sure this town car is in tip-top shape, with a host of new parts and upgrades. We're talking a new battery, brakes, starter, and shocks, plus a rebuilt carburetor and a fresh tune-up. This baby is ready to hit the road and turn some heads. And let's talk about that engine for a second. Under the hood, you'll find a powerful 8-cylinder power plant that's ready to rumble. The seller says it runs great, so you won't have to worry about any pesky mechanical issues holding you back from enjoying this classic ride. Of course, no car is perfect, and the seller is upfront about that. They mention that there are some scams out there, so they're not interested in wasting anyone's time. But if you're a serious buyer with a love for classic luxury, this town car is definitely worth a closer look. And at just $12,500, it's a steal compared to some of the other classic cars out there. Sure, it might not be the cheapest ride on the block, but when you consider the condition, features, and sheer cool factor of this town car, it's a price that's hard to beat. So if you're ready to experience the ultimate in classic American luxury, don't let this 1979 Lincoln Town Car pass you by. 15. We've got a real treat for you. A 1985 Buick Riviera Base 2 Dr. Coupe that's up for grabs on Craigslist for just $2,500. Now, I know what you might be thinking. A car that old for that cheap? There's got to be a catch. And you're right, there is. But hear me out, because this Riviera still has plenty of charm and potential. First off, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the mileage. At 142,678 miles, this Riviera has definitely seen some action. But hey, that's to be expected for a car that's almost 40 years old. The seller is upfront about it in the ad, so you know exactly what you're getting into. Now let's talk about the good stuff. This Riviera is a classic example of Buick's luxury coupe styling from the 80s. It's got a sleek black exterior and a blue interior that's sure to turn heads. Plus, with a 5.0 LV8 engine under the hood, you know this thing has some power. But it's not just about looks and performance. This Riviera is loaded with features that were cutting edge back in the day. We're talking power brakes, power steering, power windows, power door locks, and even a power antenna. Plus, it's got cruise control, a tilt steering wheel, and a split bench front seat for maximum comfort. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. A car this old is going to have some issues. The seller doesn't mention anything specific in the ad, but you can expect some wear and tear and maybe even a few quirks here and there. But that's all part of the charm of owning a classic car. So, if you're looking for a project car with plenty of potential or just a cool vintage ride to cruise around town in, this 1985 Buick Riviera might be just the thing. And at just $2,500, it's a steal compared to some of the other classic cars out there. 16. We've got a real gem for you, a 1981 Ford Thunderbird that's been given a serious power boost. This beauty is up for sale on Craigslist for just $7,000, and let me tell you, it's worth every penny. First off, let's talk about the condition of this T-Bird. The seller says it's in good shape, and from the looks of it, they're not exaggerating. The white paint job is clean and shiny, and the body looks straight and rust-free. It's clear that this car has been well maintained over the years. But the real excitement starts when you pop the hood. This Thunderbird isn't rocking its original engine. Oh no! It's been upgraded with a 1988 Mustang GT 302 engine, complete with headers and a cam. That means this thing is putting out some serious horsepower, and with dual exhaust, you know it's going to sound absolutely wicked when you put your foot down. Now, I know some purists might scoff at the idea of an engine swap, but hear me out. The 302 engine is a tried-and-true power plant that's been a favorite of Ford enthusiasts for decades. And with the upgrades this one has, it's sure to make this Thunderbird an absolute blast to drive. Plus, with only 69,000 miles on the odometer, this car has plenty of life left in it. And with a clean title and an automatic transmission, it's ready to hit the road as soon as you take it home. Now, I know $7,000 might seem like a lot for a car that's over 40 years old, but when you consider the upgrades and the overall condition of this Thunderbird, it's actually a pretty sweet deal. You'd be hard-pressed to find another car with this kind of power and style for that price. So, if you're looking for a classic car with a modern twist, this 1981 Ford Thunderbird might just be the one for you. It's got the looks, the power, and the potential to be an absolute head-turner wherever you go. 17. All right, folks, get ready to feast your eyes on a true classic. A 1971 Chrysler Town & Country wagon that's up for grabs on Craigslist for just $8,200. This beauty is a rare find, and it's got all the bells and whistles you could want in a vintage ride. First off, let's talk about the condition. The seller says it's in good shape, and from what I can see, they're not kidding around. The green paint job looks nice and shiny, and the body appears to be straight and solid. The seller even mentions that these wagons are usually rusted to pieces, but not this one. That's a huge plus in my book. Now, let's talk about what's under the hood. This Town & Country is packing a beefy 440, 4-barrel engine that's sure to get your heart racing. And with a new dual exhaust system from the headers back, you know this thing is going to sound absolutely wicked when you step on the gas. But it's not just about power. This wagon is loaded with features that were cutting edge back in the day. We're talking factory AC, a tilt telescoping steering wheel, cruise control, a power driver's seat, and even an AM/FM 8-track player. Plus, it's got power disc brakes and a third row of seating, making it perfect for hauling around the whole family in style. Now, I do have to mention a couple of small issues. The seller notes that the windshield is cracked and the speedometer is inoperable, but hey, those are relatively minor problems that can be fixed down the line. And the fact that the seller is upfront about them just goes to show that they're an honest person who's not trying to hide anything. Overall, this 1971 Chrysler Town & Country wagon is a true gem. It's got the power, the features, and the style that make it a standout among classic cars. And at just $8,200, it's a bargain compared to some of the other vintage wagons out there. So if you're in the market for a classic ride that's sure to turn heads and get people talking, this Town & Country might just be the one for you. Give the seller a call and schedule a test drive, but be warned, once you get behind the wheel of this beauty, you might just fall in love. 18. We've got a classic 1971 Ford Mustang up for grabs on Craigslist, and let me tell you, this one's got potential. The seller is asking $11,000 for this beauty, and while that might seem a bit steep at first glance, hear me out. First off, let's talk about the condition. The seller rates it as fair, which is a pretty honest assessment. This Mustang has been around the block a few times, and it's got some miles on it. 75,000 to be exact. But don't let that scare you off, because this car has been well maintained over the years. The seller mentions that the transmission was rebuilt and the engine was inspected by Ford themselves. That's a huge plus in my book, because it means that the two most important components of this car have been given some serious TLC. You can rest assured that this Mustang has been in good hands. Now, I do have to mention the wiring issue that the seller brings up. Apparently, there's a problem that's causing the battery to drain. But hey, that's just one of those quirks that comes with owning a classic car. And the seller is upfront about it, which I appreciate. It's always better to know what you're getting into before you buy. But let's talk about the good stuff. This Mustang is a coupe, which means it's got that classic sporty look that we all know and love. And with a clean title and an automatic transmission, it's ready to hit the road as soon as you take it home. Now, I know $11,000 might seem like a lot for a car that needs a bit of work, but when you consider the potential of this Mustang, it's actually a pretty good deal. These cars are iconic pieces of American muscle car history, and they're only going to become more valuable as time goes on. Plus, think about the satisfaction you'll get from bringing this beauty back to its former glory. With a little elbow grease and some TLC, you could have a real head-turner on your hands. And who knows, maybe you'll even be able to flip it for a profit down the line. So if you're a Mustang enthusiast with a bit of mechanical know-how and a love for classic cars, this 1971 Ford Mustang might just be the project you've been waiting for. It's got the bones of a great car, and with a little work, it could be a real showstopper. 19. We've got a real treat for you. A 1964 Chevrolet Corvair that's looking for a new home. The seller is asking $9,000 for this beauty, and let me tell you, it's worth every penny. First off, let's talk about the condition of this Corvair. The seller mentions that it's been well maintained during their ownership, and it shows. The black paint job is fresh and shiny, thanks to a recent professional paint job. And with new tires, this car is ready to hit the road in style. Now, I know some of you might be a bit wary of the Corvair given its reputation for being a bit quirky, but let me assure you, this car is a true classic. It's got a unique rear-engine design that sets it apart from other cars of its era, and it's got a charm all its own. Under the hood, or should I say in the trunk, this Corvair is packing a gas-powered engine that the seller says runs very well. And with an automatic transmission, it's easy to drive and perfect for cruising around town or hitting the highway. Now, I do have to mention one small issue. The odometer is broken. But honestly, that's not a big deal in my book. This car is all about the experience of driving a classic, not about racking up the miles. And with only 45,000 miles on the clock, at least that's what the seller thinks, this Corvair has plenty of life left in it. But the real kicker here is the price. At just $9,000, this Corvair is a steal compared to some of the other classic cars out there. And with a clean title, you can rest assured that you're getting a car with a clear history and no hidden surprises. So if you're in the market for a classic car that's a little bit different, this 1964 Chevrolet Corvair might just be the one for you. It's got the looks, the charm, and the potential to be a real head-turner wherever you go. 20. We've got a real gem for you. A 1975 Ford Maverick that's been given some serious upgrades. This beauty is up for sale on Craigslist for $15,000, and let me tell you, it's worth every penny. First off, let's talk about what's under the hood. This Maverick is packing a 302 engine with full injection, which means it's got plenty of power to spare. And with a fully rebuilt C4 transmission, you know this thing is going to shift smoothly and reliably, but the upgrades don't stop there. This Maverick has been fitted with disc brakes on all four wheels, which is a huge improvement over the original drum brakes. And with an Explorer differential 8.8 and 3.73 Posey, this car is ready to handle whatever you throw at it. The suspension has been upgraded too, with coilovers on the front. That means this Maverick is going to handle like a dream, whether you're cruising down the highway or tearing up some back roads. Now, I know some of you might be a bit wary of a car with a rebuilt title, but let me assure you, this Maverick has been built to last. The seller has put a lot of work into this car, and it shows. It runs and drives very well, and with new tires, it's ready to hit the road. The brown paint job might not be everyone's cup of tea, but I think it gives this Maverick a unique look that sets it apart from the crowd, and with 125,000 miles on the odometer, this car has plenty of life left in it. Now, I know $15,000 might seem like a lot for a Maverick, but when you consider all the upgrades and the work that's gone into this car, it's actually a pretty good deal. You'd be hard-pressed to find another Maverick with this kind of power and handling for that price. So, if you're looking for a classic car with some serious performance upgrades, this 1975 Ford Maverick might just be the one for you. It's got the power, the handling, and the potential to be an absolute blast to drive. But don't just take my word for it. Go check it out for yourself. Give the seller a call and schedule a test drive. And if you end up taking this beauty home, be sure to let us know how it goes. We'd love to see some pics of you tearing up the streets in this mean machine.